Hi, thanks for staying with us. Research indicates that whether a legislator is a male or female has a distinct impact on their policy priorities, making it critical that women are present in politics to represent the concern of women and other marginalized voters and help improve the responsiveness of policy making and governance. There is strong evidence that as more women are elected to office, there is also a corollary rather, increase in policy making that emphasizes quality of life and reflects the priority of families, women, and ethnic and racial minorities. Women's political participation has profound positive and democratic impact on communities, legislatures, political parties, and citizens' lives, and help democracy deliver. Now, we have enough proof that indicates the importance of having women in politics. And we are curious not only to understand that the past, not only to understand the past, but we are also looking forward to what's happening now, the present state of women in politics, and we are hoping to see what the future of women in politics will look like in Nigeria. Now, please, if you want to find out this one with us, let us hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-84663. So are you curious like me that want to find out what's happening with women in politics?
For me?
Yes.
No, I'm not that curious.
Really? Why?
Life is happening to women in politics. And I know it's not going to be handed down to women just like that. But I also know that in leadership, women are more open-minded. I think women can be better leaders when given the opportunity and an enabling environment in terms of equity and the support that they need. So yes, I'm hoping for in Nigeria that would have a female president.
Yeah, well.
It might be very far off. See, you are not even as optimistic as I am. But I'm hoping for that, and I know that women can do better. But I'm also not in support of just giving the position to a woman because she's a woman. You have to be able to do the job. You have to, regardless politics, corporates, wherever it is, you have to, like you always say, match everything intellectually and everything that is required to be able to do the job, take emotions aside and get the job done. So yes, that's how I feel, and I'm optimistic.
Money, how far?
Yeah, I agree with her. I don't believe, I'm so much in support of women in politics, you know, because I believe that women in any field, they kind of do better. They pay more attention, they are more, you know, women do better basically. Yeah. So I think, yes, I think it's high time that we all jump in, you know, she talked about making, you know, creating an enabling environment for the women. I totally agree, because prior to this time, women thought that politics was just for men. So they did not play in this field. But nowadays, you see some women coming out to play. So I think we just create an enabling environment for them.
It's actually interesting because we are not where we were many years ago in terms of women's involvement in politics. And you know, where we are today, I know some political parties that make it an effort to give even sometimes the tickets for women, free and all of that. So there, I think we are far from where we are far from where we were
not
before.
Where we want to
be definitely
very far
from where we started. But let me bring in our guest, Abosede George-Ogan. She is the founder of Women in Leadership Advancement Network, WILAN. Is a tri-sector leader with almost 20 years experience working across the non-profit, private and public sector as a development professional. She began her career in development with Action Aid International Nigeria and coordinated corporate social responsibilities and sustainability for Keystone Bank, First Bank and Samsung Electronics West Africa, respectively. She has a degree in political science and public administration from Ignatian University, an MSc in communication for innovation and development from the University of Reading, and a master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School, where she was recognized with the Josephine Vernon Award as the most outstanding Edward S. Mason Fellow, and the Women and Public Policy Program Barbara Jordan Award for Women's Leadership. So she is very ready for us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Abosede.
It's really good to be here. Thank you so much, all of you, for having me.
Yeah,
I'm really
it's so
glad
interesting.
to join the conversation.
Thank you so much for coming. It's so interesting that we're talking women in politics, and I'm reading this fantastic resume. So why is she not president already? But tell us, Abosede. I mean, you have worked very closely, and this is something you are passionate about, making sure that you see women well represented in political spaces, in leadership roles, and all of that. Maybe you should give us a background. Where do you think? As I had mentioned earlier, we're not where we used to be, but where are we currently when it comes to women's participation in leadership roles? Where are we currently?
So, I mean, first of all, I'm really excited that we're creating space to have this conversation, because I think that that's really important. In terms of where we are, so you are right that we're not where we used to be, but I think what is sad is since we became a democratic nation 21 years ago, we have actually retrogressed in terms of women's political participation.
Really? Wow.
Yes. So the highest we've ever been was in 2007. But as at 2019, the numbers actually got worse, right? And what is evident is that if we do not do something that is drastic, and that's why, the conversation around inclusion is that if we just leave it, so if there's a gap, I always say, and you leave it, it would remain. So it's important, or widen. So it's really important that we're being intentional and deliberate to closing that gap. So in terms of where we are, I'd like to make it very visual for people who are like me. You basically have only 8 women out of 109 senators who are supposed to advocate for the improved livelihoods of women and girls in this country, of everybody. But to your point and to the earlier statistic that you read,
yes,
the evidence tells us that men do not prioritize certain areas, right? And this is maternal. Nigeria is the maternal mortality capital of the world. It's the child bride capital of the world. These are not things that will thrive or remain if we had women in positions of leadership and decision making. Then in the House, what does it look like? You have 360 seats in that lower chamber, and there are only 21 women in those chambers.
That's a vivid representation.
Absolutely. And I think that, this is the point. It gets worse in the State House of Assemblies. We have House of Assemblies that do not have women in this country. And we have states that have men as the Commissioner for Women Affairs.
Oh, wow.
We do, yeah.
Yes, we do. So, I mean, I think that it's really important to really bring the conversation to that level where we really understand that, we're not having this conversation to say, hand women down, tokens or anything like that. Nigeria is not lacking in competent women. Let's be clear. However, there are real barriers that exist. And so I think the conversation we should be having is, what are some of those barriers and how can we really close the gaps? And to your point, this is not just in women's political leadership. This is across all sort of leadership stratas and across all levels. Some areas have done better than others. I think that the business people have been able to pitch a bottom line advantage. When you have more women in leadership, the evidence actually shows that you're more profitable, your revenue increases. And so for the businessman, those are the indicators that he's working with, it's like a go. I think the conversation is, how do we sell to the Nigerian citizen ahead of 2023 that having more women literally guarantees an improved livelihood for you? So I think we need to elevate the conversation between women. Because that's where we lose a lot of people. And that's why, even earlier, I took note of the comment that you were making about, let's just, it has to be a competent woman. And I really argue about that. And I'm saying it publicly. Because when it comes to men, we don't hold them against those standards. We never talk about competency.
Yes.
Let's be fair. All the Constitution requires, if you're going to run for office, is SSC for most offices. So what are we talking about?
Yes.
How many women? The Anambra election, almost all the deputy candidates of the governors had PhDs, but the governors had SSCE. The candidates, the people who the party gave the tickets to. So I think we should be really clear that we're not asking that you hand women down, but that we should acknowledge that there's a clear gap and something must be done. So this is the conversation.
So I acknowledge. I like that.
I acknowledge that there's a clear gap. I mean, it's only, even the blind knows that there's a clear gap, right? And as much as we don't hold, I agree that we don't hold our men to that level of competence when that conversation is happening. It's what should be happening. And even if we've made that mistake in that regard, I don't think we want to begin to make the same mistake when it comes to women, because that gap is wide as well. If one of us goes up there and does something that is remotely wrong, it rubs off badly on every other person, right? So it still takes me back to the competence. I like how you said that in business, it's making sense to the businessman because the numbers are different, right? When a woman is at the top, the statistics shows it really. This is not us just saying it. Absolutely. If you research, you'll find it there. Yeah. There are more progress. The bottom line is making sense. Revenues are coming and all that. But when it comes back to politics and where you said that it is not for the lack of competent women, I don't know how to react to that, because if I agree that we have competent women in politics, what would you say is the difference? What is that barrier that is making them not shine forth, even in terms of their personal branding, in terms of their positioning, in terms of playing in in terms of politicking and all that it takes? What would you say is that, or those barriers, right? Because if I want to agree with you that we have competent women in politics, then what's going on?
I mean, thank you so much for that question. It actually begins to trigger the deeper conversations that we should be having. I think the first thing, and we can use ourselves as an example, is we are in a patriarchal society. It's the order of the day, right? And so we were all socialized in a certain way. If I ask all of us around this table, we were, we grew up with, be in the kitchen while you're, I've got 2 generations of brothers. I saw it. You know what I mean? So we're socialized as women in a certain way. Yeah. And so it's almost like, no, you're not supposed to be there. And whether you like it or not, the socialization process is deep. Right? There's a lot of unlearning, right, that happens, and behavioral change that needs to happen for you to become a different type of person. So that's one piece. The second piece that I think is really important to note is, and so what I've described sort of summarizes itself in like the deep entrenched social, cultural, and religious barriers, because they're real, right? Which is like, politics is not for you, you shouldn't be here, all that good stuff. But there's also the other part of the girl children in Nigeria who are not currently being educated. So if you look at the gap in terms of we all get into school, we all come out of school, as you go further, the gap widens, right? And I always say, if you think about leadership, after head girl in secondary school, ain't nobody handing you anything else. It's a level playing field, student union. You are now one of the candidates. It's either you can do it or you cannot. Do you know what I mean? Go through the process. If you've not been equipped for leadership, what are you supposed to do? Now, let's go further. You start to work. Women are economically disenfranchised. Do you know how much a party ticket is? Where am I supposed to find 20 million naira to buy the ticket? I haven't started campaigning. So there are real issues that serve as barriers. Now, a woman tends to care about her family. She's thinking about school fees. She's thinking about her community. She's thinking about a lot of things that will not make her just, go and take maybe all of her savings just and say, I want it. Yeah. So these are the real barriers. So a woman can be competent. So building competence in maybe her specialized area of whatever it is that she chooses to do, but she doesn't have the capacity to then just go and take that money. Which brings me to another point. As women, we do not support ourselves collectively. Now, I'm not here to preach the narrative that women don't support women. I don't agree. I feel like that's a narrative that was sold to us and we propagated it by ourselves. However, the men's club is a thing. if a woman comes to you and says she wants to run for office, what's your first reaction? Let's be honest. Why? You want to go and die? Those are some of the things that we say. But if a guy goes to tell his guys, man, I want to run for office, are you a boy? Waiting you need. What can we do for you? Yeah. It's just the way, and this has happened over and over and over again, right? So there's no collective that's standing behind the woman in a way where she knows she's not running alone. The man knows that once he's done, if he spends all his money, he'll go to his friend, he will give him contracts. But when women run, and you should hear the horror stories.
You know what? You know what, money. Let's take a break. When we come back from that break, I want to expatiate more on that. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, thanks for staying with us. Now, if you just tuned in, we're having an amazing chat with Abosede George-Ogan on Nigerian women in politics. We're discussing the past, what's happening presently, and we're looking into the future. Now, please let us hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-84663. So, Abosede, you talked about women not supporting women. So, I keep saying that all the time for the few people that have come out. By the way, we support women here. I don't know about other women.
That's amazing.
Because we have one of us running for House of Rep amongst us, and we are giving her the support as we can. The thing is, when women come out and eventually they have those tickets, right? Because the question, the comment Elsie had made earlier on competence, it was not so much of whether maybe school certificate or something. The truth is, does that woman have the capacity to be able to push and sell and do the job? I think that's what a lot of women look out for. So even when we've had candidates that were presidential candidates and they were female, there was one that it was just one person that voted. I think she was one that voted for herself. Even the people within her, within her family, did not vote, right? So does this not tell you that there's a fundamental issue, how we see the strength of women and, how we engineer our minds, because the strength of a woman is not physical. So are we educating ourselves right to understand that strength that a woman possesses? Because if they say that she's the one that thinks about the vulnerable, she's the one that thinks about the minority, shouldn't you as a wise person know that, okay, I think this is the best person to, but we do not see it in that light. I don't know what parameters that we use to compare. You wanted to come in?
Yeah, what I think, like she said, is a foundational problem. So we are in Africa. In other parts of the world, you have situations where the woman can work and the man can stay at home and look after the children. Try it in Nigeria. They would abuse the man. So we're already at a disadvantage. So the society believes that it's the woman's responsibility to take the children to school. So you do school runs in the morning. You have to make their food, pack food for them. You pick them up from school. You take them to church. It's your responsibility to do their homework. It's your responsibility to teach them scriptures if they're Christians. And, so when will this woman get up to make money and empower herself financially? That's one. And then, does she have to wait till the children leave home before she fights with the big boys?
Yeah. So I think you've just raised a really, really fundamental issue. And I like to say this. I like to say, how is it that you are born of a woman, nurtured by a woman, trained by a woman, but cannot be led by a woman? I don't understand it. What are some of the skill sets that a leader should have? Let's break it down. Because these are the real conversations that we should be having. Yeah. Do you know what it is to manage a home? So public finance, public management, finance management is a skill set. Yeah. She's managing budgets at home, isn't she? Right? So I think that there are a lot of things that women are negotiating constantly, right? Because ultimately, let's be clear, leadership is about solving problems. And if you're solving problems, it's either you know how to solve the problem or who to call to solve the problem. So what exactly are we really talking about when we say women cannot lead? So I think to your point, to both your points, people just have a perception of what female leadership is. And I think they equate it to weakness for whatever reasons and wherever those orientations have come from. But what the evidence tells us is that women lead differently. So a woman has more empathetic leadership. And I'm sure you must have talked about this on the show in the year of COVID, why women leaders were thriving around the world much more than men. It's not so much that they were better leaders. That's not the point. But in crisis, what is needed is empathetic leadership. There's a sort of organization that is required that Jacinda Ardern in the Netherlands provided. You know, so when you then have a system, a political system where you have only one type of leadership, then you're depriving the people of this other type of leadership. And that's what we're seeing in Nigeria. So the point I'm making is we need to make people understand that female leadership looks different. But guess what? We haven't seen it long enough to recognize it. Which is another thing, role modeling. Evidence tells us that, look, the more I see women in positions of power, the more I believe that women should be in positions of power. So we need to role model it. Which brings me to the earlier point. Let's have more women. Let's leave this concern about competent. They are all competent.
Yeah, just come out.
Okay, somebody asked a question. I think Manu will take that. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to take you back to something you said earlier, which is when you were talking about when we leave secondary school, head girl, that's the only place that role is handed down and then you have to get into it. And you said, because women are not equipped for leadership. I mean, girls, really, while growing up. So how do we take it back? Start while you're doing what you're doing, right? Take it from the scratch and equip girls for leadership. How do we begin to get that right?
So one of WILAN's core pillars is actually equipping young women. And I think that was one of the major things that I, in this work that I've learned. Because, at 35, if it's not like people cannot unlearn, relearn, but the truth is there's certain values, competencies that you should have that if Nigeria shows you, you know what I mean? You might not have it at 35, you know what I mean? So it's important, like if you think about the United States, even somebody who doesn't go to school is politically active, is an active citizen.
Yes. Very
because, that political education is for everybody, regardless. So you might not be educated, but you'll be politically
academically.
But you'll be politically educated. So for the young women, we need to start to make them understand that they are leaders. I think that there's a limiting belief that women grow up with here, that you can do X, but it is not leadership. And that's what I'm saying. What is leadership?
I was going to say something because you said they need to empower these young girls and make them know that they're leaders. My mom's and my parents' first daughter, so I was brought up doing most of the chores at home. As you know how it is in Nigeria,
yes.
You're the first daughter, so they have to train you.
Responsibility.
Exactly. So I think I grew up with this thing that I had to do a lot of things. So I did them, and I did them very well.
So I think the young girl already knows how to handle things.
Yes.
It's just that, like you said, let her think. You can handle things in the house.
Yeah.
You can handle things in the kitchen. You can't handle things in the nation.
So they limit your space of influence.
Thank you.
Of where you can
Capacity.
do. Yes. Because, one of the things that, is very fresh in my memory is I grew up with my maternal grandma in the house. And I can never forget how, everybody has to eat dinner at 7. So literally you walk backwards to ensure that you've gone to the market, you've done this, you've done that.
And everything is ready
at
by
7. Is that not time management? Is that not productivity? What is leadership? So I think that, you really bring us home to a really good point, which is you limit the sphere in which people can exercise leadership.
Let's take some comments, Manny.
Okay, so this one says, good evening, Uwa, Elsie, and Manny. Can I hear your guest talk on Khadija, KOL, running for the presidency post? Interesting.
Great. So, I recently met Khadija and had an opportunity to speak to her. So I'll tell you what I think personally. I think that it's really, really good. Because, the conversation I have in Nigeria is this. So I'm almost certain that the major criticism is, why didn't she start from I'm almost certain. You
That's
know,
what everybody's saying.
I'm almost
Who
certain.
are you? You just come.
Right, you just come,
President.
right? You want to be president.
What a bamba.
But I think that, you know, if it was a man, that would not
Nobody
be
would ask
the
the
stars.
question, yeah.
You know, because there's Chukuka, right? Let's even put them out there.
Moye.
There's Chukuka Monye, right? And I haven't heard that yet, you know?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that yet. And yes, they've
People
come.
have said the same thing to Kingsley Moghalu. I mean, Chukwu Kamonye just started, and a lot of criticism has not
So it's still
greeted
upcoming.
him. But you see, what's his name? The man that is a businessman and a motivational speaker.
Fela Durotoye.
Yes, we've heard that as well for Fela Durotoye. We've heard that for Kingsley Moghalu. Like, why do you just want to start from there when you can start somewhere?
So I think there's a good, so let's think about it. So the first thing is, if a woman has been working for the last 30 years and she actually starts her career as, you know, an early career person and then emerges CEO of a bank, a multinational, after 30 years, she has transferable skills to politics
Most definitely.
or to political leadership. She cannot go and start from local government chairman. Let's just be clear.
Okay.
True.
Let's be clear.
True.
She has
that's a
certain
very
skill
good point,
sets
yeah.
that are going to be transferable.
It's just like an Ibuku and Woshika going for local government chairman. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
So yes,
it
so
doesn't
because
have
Yeah.
to be local government chairman, because all you said now can also be attributed to a Kingsley Moghalu. I was just saying that to say that
Men
this
too have been
question,
accused.
it
But let
wasn't
me-
just for women.
So
But I get your
let's
point.
continue. So the person that asked that question now sends another message that says, how can women navigate power structure? You know, because again, we cannot overlook that there's a power structure already on ground. I think one of the biggest criticism for KOL is that Khadija does not have a political party yet, and we don't even understand, even if she eventually comes to a particular political party, would they even give her the ticket to run when there are all the structures already on ground?
And
right?
I think this is what the real conversation is,
Should
which is
be,
where
yeah.
I was going. It's about value creation, isn't it? Because that's what I'm saying. So leadership is about solving problems. So it's about value creation. So what people are saying in essence is, show me that you have what it takes to lead.
Yeah.
Ultimately, right? So whether they're male, female, whether it's KOL, people need to see that you, and to your point, within Nigeria doesn't have independent candidates.
Candidacy, yes,
It doesn't.
yeah.
So you have
Within
to
the context
run,
of the laws of Nigeria.
so you
You
have to run
under a party.
under a
So
political party.
I actually
Now,
think it's strategic.
building a political party is not a day's job, right? Which is why the leading parties continue to sort of dominate, right? So that person is making a good point to say, what is the political and how do you navigate those
The
structures?
structure.
I really think that you navigate those structures by value, by showing value. Let's just be clear. What exactly are the party leaders looking for? And I say that knowing that it's not as easy as I'm saying it. But the point I make is, if you show someone
you are relevant.
that you have a base of 50,000, I'm not talking about online followers, with all due respect to our online followers, but that you have a strong base of followers.
They'll bet on you.
If they have 2 million followers already,
Yeah.
like live, and you bring your 50,000, is that not value add?
Yeah.
So it is that value, I feel, that KOL should be able to show.
Yeah.
And if she can show that, so for example, if we can sit here and say maybe we don't know yet those people, or she has a database or something, it's a negotiating tool. You go to the table and
Period.
negotiate.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So let me take a comment. It says, good evening. Yeah, go ahead. Good evening, ladies. I wish women can be elected in more political positions, but because of the patriarchy society, we found ourselves, a woman in the Senate is currently pushing for a bill for permanent seats to be occupied by women.
Yes.
I support this because sincerely, the terrain is difficult.
Absolutely.
Elsie, your comment.
Good evening, ladies. Very interesting topic. In the past, Nigerian women had demonstrated capacity to rule. Example, Aba women riots in the 1920s. We've had women before independence doing well, establishing authorities in their various localities. So why can't this be translated to formal governance? Yeah. Now, women are satisfied campaigning for men, dancing and wearing ashwebi during political rallies. Yeah. Women need to support each other when it's time for politicking, but what do we see? Women will prefer to support men, bring down their fellow women. I don't think appointment is enough. We need to vote and be voted for. Use our numerical strength to enforce level playing ground, convenient time for political meetings and not the 2 a.m. meetings. Men talk about few women that have not represented well compared to majority of men that have failed.
Yeah.
Please let women get their PVCs and take power rightly instead of waiting and begging to be deputies. Thank you. And that's from BC. Thank you so much,
Thank
BC.
you, BC. Thank you.
You know, so this person says, this our upcoming generation, they are not showing interest in leadership. All they do is club, partying. What advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
So I think that we live in interesting times. And, you know, when you were talking about sort of the home and, you know, keeping the home front and women having roles, so gender roles, right, what we call gender roles. I really think that this generation is changing that, to be honest. I think that they're not as active, they were not as gullible as we were, you know, to say this is where, because about gender roles, it was about this is the role you should perform, this is where you should perform the role, kind of what you were describing earlier. So, you know what it is? I think it's still about how we're being raised, you know. I see the advantages of the new generation and this autonomy that they have and what we call agency, right, that they have. So obviously the evidence shows us they're richer. So the Gen Zs, they're richer than, you know, the millennials, right? And one of the reasons is this get up and go and do and all of that. But I think that there is wisdom in sort of, call it generational collaboration.
Thank you.
I think that's missing. So actually there are two things. There's the generational loyalty. We're not as loyal to each other within the younger generations as the Gen Zs.
Thank you.
But then there's a cross collaboration of wisdom that is required. Let me explain. One wants to go too fast, one wants to go too slow. If we collaborate, we'll probably end up somewhere in the balance. So, I mean, if I think about my 25-year-old self, I mean, I really grew up with values. Both my parents were, you know, served Nigeria for 35 years in they were public servants, right? My dad in the military, my mom as a teacher. So service is in my DNA is what I like to say. So I think that people are not growing up understanding, which is why, for me, we need to fix Nigeria. Because guess what? The way people are growing up is like, I don't owe this country because this country has not given me anything. I think there's a real disconnection there. So we need to fix the country to start to fix that narrative. The typical American feels indebted to the country. And that's what we talk about, what is it, when you're patriotic. But a Nigerian youth feels like Nigeria has not given them anything in the last 25 years.
Like Nigeria
So we've talked present a lot. We've talked about the past. Where do you see women in politics in Nigeria come 10, 20 years from today?
So I really think, I'm excited we started having the conversation about the reserved seats bill that's been pushed by the Deputy Chief Whip, Honorable Nkiruka Onyejocha. So she's been in the assembly. This is her 4th cycle. I think that's really important. Because what that tells you is that she's been there long enough to see bills on a push for legislated gender quotas being thrown out. So the National Gender Policy, which came into effect in 2006, has 35% representation, minimum representation in appointive and elective office. 2006 is 2022. It's never been implemented. So when I was telling you in 2007, that was one of the times that whoever, if you remember, whoever was in leadership tried to push for us to get that at least in appointive offices, but it was much better even in elective office. So what's my point? The truth is, if we're going to improve women's political leadership in this country, we need a legislated gender quota. Because even the leading political parties have it in their constitution, a gender quota, but there is no incentive. What is the incentive to put a woman as the party ticket bearer against a man? What is the incentive? It's almost, they see it as setting themselves up for failure. So that's one piece, right? A legislated gender quota. The second piece is party politics. Unless we change to proportional representation or something, we restructure. Today, we are still going to be elected through a party. Now, party leadership, who's at the leadership? Who's at the leadership of the party? Women only get women leader positions and deputy women leader. This is really important because if there are no women again in those positions advocating that more women must be given tickets, it's still a cycle.
So it's not just about women in positions, occupying positions, it's women in top positions.
Leadership positions.
Top
And guess what?
positions.
If we have a legislator gender quota today, parties will align.
I think
So it's very clear.
Because they don't have a choice. It's in the-
Because
it's
we
in
need
the-
35%
of
of
women.
your
So they have no
candidates
choice.
Yes.
to be women.
So they will be looking for you.
So they will be looking for women.
Encouraging, you know,
So
creating
these are some of the
environment.
things we need to do. But I think also, but this is a long-term game. We need to change mindsets.
Absolutely.
I think so.
And I really think that, as I've said, the mindsets will be changed when they see women lead. When we have enough examples, and people don't call that one negative example that we often
Please
call
don't call
in
it.
this
Thank
country.
you.
No, never. Won't do it. You know. So this is my point. And you know that person made a good point about when you compare, you know, these who have failed versus one who has failed. But you know, it's like you said, that represents all of us. But the more we have,
The better.
those who fail and those who succeed, the more examples and the more stories we can tell.
There will not be a balance.
Not being able to have anything.
I have a question,
We
but
don't have
unfortunately
question,
she can't take it. Yeah,
I just think that what we need to do is politeracy. Just continue educating people because you made a point that really hit home. You know, she talked about women being competent and everything, and you said it's not about that because we don't hold the men accountable as well. So I think we should just encourage women, come out as you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Abosede.
Thank
We had a
you.
fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
I mean, this is just the start of many more conversations
Yes,
to come
indeed.
because we
Yes,
have
indeed.
tied you with your umbilical here
I'm
already.
more than happy to come back. Thank you for making space, like I said, to have
Oh
this
yes, we
conversation.
have to. We don't have
We
a
must
choice.
continue.
We must continue to drive the right conversations. Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Elsie Godwin. All right, so before we go, do ensure you follow us on Instagrams at WayShowAfrica and Twitter as well at WayShowAfrica1. You can interact with us further, drop a comment, and more importantly, follow all our engagements on social media, like, share, and remember to invite your families and friends to watch and follow the conversation. Now, if you missed today's quote, here it is again. For me, a better democracy is a democracy where women do not only have the right to vote and to elect, but to be elected. It's as simple as short. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. as we bring another great conversation to your screen. Enjoy.